Welcome to the Arena Decklist Podcast. I'm Gerry Thompson, joined by Bryan Gottlieb, a man who is still recovering from his illness, but I think maybe doing okay.
Doing okay. I also don't want any sympathy because I made some decisions where I probably prolonged my illness by going a little harder than I needed to and didn't really give myself the proper recovery time. So no sympathy necessary, but slowly working my way back to 100%.
Yeah, I wasn't angling for sympathy so much as just, if he sounds weird, this is why.
Yeah, this might just be my voice now, honestly. Like I may have just like permanently damaged myself.
Just a little raspy.
Yeah, a little raspy, a little like thick. I just like feel thick all the time. It's kind of gross to describe it that way, but that is how it feels, and it sucks. I'd like to be better.
Okay, I'm doing all right.
Good. I'm glad.
I just hung out with Josh Show and his family for the weekend.
Very cool.
Which, yeah, it was pretty cool. I've hung out with his family a few times over the years, and it's just always a good time. Like, they're good people. I like them a lot. Obviously, I like Josh a lot, and got to spend a lot of time in the car with Josh because we drove from like Virginia to the Atlanta area where his parents live. So have not been on like an 8-hour road trip in a while. It was a lot.
It is a lot. The last time I did it was actually to see you when I came down to play SCG Pittsburgh. It was about an 8-hour road trip. And I think I am out of shape for them. Just used to be very good at like mounting up for the weekend and going and doing that. But it feels longer these days.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know how much longer I can do that, but am going back to visit Josh this weekend. Going to play in some PTQs. So
Ooh, very exciting. You got your first PTQ lined up.
Yeah, I'm registered and everything. Have most of my cards even.
Are you waiting on them in the mail? Are you trying to get them last minute at the event, as we advise people not to do? What's the plan?
So I have a plan. What I did was we went to a store in the area when we were down in Atlanta area, and we played a bunch of games. I kind of figured out what I wanted to pick up, and then just some of the stuff was pretty overpriced, as I think, you should expect, just like buying directly from a store, instead of like shopping around on TCG Player or whatever. So there are just some things I couldn't buy, just like Ren and 6 after it just got reprinted for infinite dollars. I was just like, no, I can maybe find these cheaper. So at the very least, I doubt I'll have to pay more than what they had them for.
Okay.
So my plan, and I'm realizing now I should have just sacrificed everything for the sake of convenience, because now I have to like check around the stores in this area. But that's a little bit easier. I can like maybe check online for stuff like that. But so I'm short some Ren and 6s and maybe some last minute card changes, and I'm working on some sideboarding guides and whatnot. So back in the thick of things, only to almost certainly just like go into the store and, revolving door out because no one's wearing masks or whatever. Who knows? Anything could happen.
Anything could happen. That's the motto of both my life and my relationship with Magic these days. It's just, anything could happen. Completely, everything's on the table.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like, had fun, hung out, but like also did a bunch of work. So it's kind of.
I'm looking forward to hearing. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing like what your conclusions are, having just completely immersed yourself in the format and done it in a fashion that, like you said, like the old days, just actually getting out there, grinding some matchups, and making some conclusions and trying to prepare for a specific field. There's an actual tournament that you are participating in, and I think that's a very interesting diversion from where we've been like doing all of our prep over the last 3 years. It's a completely different setup. Yeah,
Josh brought up an interesting point too, where it would probably be a lot of fun for us if some of these PTQs were standard, because then we could just jam on Arena. And doing it on Magic Online is not the same just because it's so slow, So I don't know. Maybe next season after standard rotation, maybe stores will start looking into it again. Maybe Wizards will, support the format, revisit it a little bit, and I think that would be cool. But
yeah, I think after rotation you could feasibly put it on the table. There's no way it was going to work this go around, but after rotation, it's interesting, and I would consider it if I was Wizards.
Yeah, I mean it sounds like a good idea, but yeah, looking at the PTQs, it's like a bunch of modern ones, a bunch of pioneer ones, the occasional sealed. So we looked around on the Wizards event locator and figured out which ones to go to this weekend. And since we had just done a bunch of work on Modern, we were prioritizing those over Pioneer a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So this weekend is Modern and Sealed for me.
And how far are you traveling for these two events?
They're up by Josh. So I'm in Richmond. He's just outside of DC in like Annandale. And I think one is pretty close to his place, and then the other one is in Maryland, so like a little bit further. But both stores seem pretty reasonable. Did a little bit of research. The first one was kind of weird though, because it was like the info on the website it was not accurate. It was like it's capped at 64 players. Call the store to register, and then Josh called the store and they're like, no, just sign up on Melee. Also, it's capped at 52. And just like little things like that where it's like I don't know exactly what to expect from all this stuff. Oh, and like the start times were wrong too.
Yeah, not a great start. I imagine some of these folks are probably running their first events, or at least their first events in a very long time, and not really up to speed on the proper setup, the proper etiquette. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Similar situation for my first event. Sign up was very easy. I was able to just go on the website, do it. It's strange in that it's so cheap. Like, I'm actually concerned about how cheap it is. $10 for a constructed tournament.
That is hella cheap. Yeah. So the one that we're playing on Saturday is $35, and 100% of the prize pool is paid out in store credit. So that's cool. And, that's just like directly advertised. We know what we're getting into. So that's nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, Josh even brought up like, oh, that feels cheap, because like towards the end of us playing in Grand Prix and stuff, it was like $100 or whatever, 10 or a GP.
Right. Yeah. Prices got out of control for a while there.
So I don't know. I mean, yeah, $10 is super cheap, but it's like if these are going to be good for your store and you think that you're going to get close to capping, and I feel like they should in most instances, if you're capped at like 50 or 60 spots because your store space is limited or whatever, it's like, I don't know, charge a little bit more, make some money off of this, honestly.
Yeah, I went looking. Now that you mentioned it, I actually didn't even look at prizes, so I just wanted to see what these were, and it's just like first place promo Nykthos and the DreamHack entry, all top 8 promo non-foil Nykthos. Additional prizes in store credit will be awarded based on rank to all top 8. Payout is based on attendance in the form of $10 added to the pool of credit per attendee. So 100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, seems very good. Additional door prizes if you're raffled off. Top 8 also gets 3 packs of Mystery Booster Convention Edition. So it seems great. I'm very impressed by how generous this one is.
Yeah, I'll be charge a little bit
up
more,
in Albany if folks are interested. I mean, I may as well do them a solid. They're, running a cheap event. Hopefully, we'll run it well. I'm going to Zombie Planet in the Albany area.
Okay, we're going to Huzzah Hobbies, and then I think Game Haven in Maryland. I don't know.
Okay,
but I also looked at a lot of store names, so I could be wrong about the Maryland one, but
yeah, kind of blended together at this point.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And this was all done at like 2 a.m. driving back home last night. So I was a little loopy, a little out of it, but we got a plan, and I have to get my car's air conditioner fixed and then go around and maybe find the missing cards and also the stuff that I didn't buy because I just added at the last second, which I tend to do. So pretty set up for 4-color Omnath and Is It Murktide, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, just soundly in the top of the meta, not looking to do anything too crazy, sticking with possibly the 2 best decks. I think that's a near fair statement.
Yeah, I think so too. Before we get into that though,
okay.
After our 10-minute preamble, I want to talk about
show's
Marvel
kind
Snap.
of a preamble at this point, isn't it? Like I feel
true.
like it's often just all preamble.
They get an hour and a half in, and they're like, "When is the actual show going to start?"
Yeah, it's not happening.
Well, maybe
do it
next
week. Yeah.
So I want to talk about Marvel Snap a little bit because I got into the beta a couple weeks ago. I think you got in like a little bit after me, right?
Mm-hmm. I got in when I was down in New Zealand, so about 3 weeks ago now, or 2.5 weeks ago, I believe.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a game that has, I don't know, it's just like it feels like it should be getting more attention, but I understand it's still in closed beta, right? So that's kind of why people might not be paying attention. But even just like their YouTube videos for announcing the game and stuff seem to hit pretty low considering it's like a massive IP and it's like Ben Brode's new company and their first game, and he, ran Hearthstone for the first like 8 years or whatever of its life, and I think he is like widely regarded as being pretty damn good at his job and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm kind of curious about that, and if people are actually interested in the game, or are just not paying attention to it because they can't really play it right now.
That is my sense. I think for anything, like, it may feel to you and I like everyone is playing it. A lot of people in our circles are playing it. I know all of the Discords, including our own that I'm in, are talking about it. Very, very highly regarded. I mean, maybe the most highly regarded IP on the planet, quite frankly,
Yeah.
in terms of, at least in terms of marketability. It kind of sells itself. And I think on average, though, people just don't know about it. And I have a feeling a large percentage of people listening to this podcast are not playing. If the percentage of people playing that were listening was under 1%, I would not be shocked.
Yeah, same. But I don't know. I'm playing a lot of mobile games currently, or off and on at least. And for the most part, my gaming history has been like I don't really like new things,
Mm.
and I mean, it's a combination of that and knowing what I do like, right? So it is very rare for something that is kind of new, and certainly, this game engine is sort of like the first of its kind. It's like kind of Gwent-ish, but not really. And I just love it, man. I just like fell in love immediately. I was like, yeah, I'll play it because my friend is working on it, and I'll try it and give him some feedback or whatever. And then I was just hooked.
I'm with you. You kind of gave me the hard sell on it. You said it was pretty incredible, doing a lot of revolutionary things, and it took me a while to like really get my interest rolling. I was just very busy at the time it dropped, so
Yeah.
Didn't really have a window for it. But obviously, you recommending it makes me want to try it, and eventually got my hands on it, and it is brilliant for its space. It's just like the perfect mobile TCG. That's the best way to describe it. It's like everything in the TCG space that has been ported over to mobile is holding on to a lot of the old ways of doing TCGs. And, even in terms of like Hearthstone, like deck sizing going down to 30 cards was a huge deal. Like it seemed very small at the time. Well, Snap goes down to 12 cards, 12 card deck. And you think, well, 12 card deck, this can't possibly be interesting. It's so interesting. It's incredible. Like the games are super varied. They are rich with strategic possibilities. You can play them in so many ways. The deck building is what really shines to me. I think there's so many different decks you can build, and they're all like a little bit on rails. Like a lot of the packages all sort of slot together, but there's room for variation too, and
Yep.
I think interesting variation. And I've just come away very impressed by the game. I think it's very good. And you mentioned there not being too many things like it. What I actually find as the most fascinating part of the game is completely stolen. It's stolen from Backgammon, actually, which is a game I love and have played a ton of. The doubling cube, essentially, and that's the snap mechanic in Marvel Snap. That's very much a backgammon thing, and what it is, essentially, you can propose to double the stakes of the match at any point, and at that point, the option to then double the stakes passes back to your opponent, and they can double it one final time. And then you play, if you're playing Arena Ladder, you're always, no matter what, playing for your 2 pips. In Marvel Snap, the number of pips you're playing a varying match for varies over time. And when someone proposes they double the points, you can withdraw. And actually, in like Backgammon, and I have a feeling, well, I know this to be true in Snap. I just don't think it's like super talked about or super explored. A huge part of the strategic edge you get is using your doubling cube efficiently and increasing the wager of games in spots where it's beneficial for you to do so without making it clear to your opponent they're in trouble, because they can just withdraw and sacrifice the game at that point. Right. So the best backgammon players get the maximum stakes possible from their opponents, and that's how they come out ahead. And I think that's going to be very true of the best Snap players. Some of it is just like you get to dictate like how many cubes you play for. So just like raise the stakes over and over if you're very good. I think that's a fine baseline strategy. But when it comes down to a more refined metagame and where like the best players are a little bit more, where that title is like more contested, basically when the game goes out of closed beta and is just available to everyone, I think the people who succeed will be the people who really leverage the snap or doubling cube mechanic to the best of their ability.
Well, it's weird because that matters for like climbing and elo and stuff,
right?
But once you get to a certain point, that just stops mattering.
So like the legend system isn't based on like snap returns. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if you're
So
placing on the
okay,
ladder, it doesn't regard like how many points you're playing for.
so you're playing for 1 cube at the
Yeah.
start, and if the
Yeah.
game goes to showdown, you're playing for 2 cubes.
Correct.
And then if one person snaps, then it's 4. If both, you are playing for 8, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then basically, if you do it optimally every single time, it's like you get 8 with every win, and you only lose 1 when you lose.
Yes.
And there's obviously a lot of variation of that, right? Because like you can snap and they don't, right? Because they are pretty sure they're losing or whatever. So climbing and getting to mythic or whatever is pretty easy, and it's just level 100, right? So you have to be like net up 1,000 cubes,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there, like that's where all the rewards end. So then you're just like in elo, your numbers going up, but you're not getting anything from it.
But the is the elo still based on how many cubes per match you're winning? Like, does your elo accelerate
Yeah,
more? Yeah,
yeah.
so it's still important. It's just not important for like the gotcha returns, basically.
Yeah. So so like mythic is level 100, right?
Yeah.
And towards the end of the first season I played, I was like 270, right? So it's like
Okay.
I'm almost 3x mythic, but I got the exact same stuff as just if I hit mythic once. So like who cares?
Right.
So yeah, my number went up, but it doesn't do anything, at least yet.
But
Still
your position on the ladder changed because of like the leaderboard based
right,
on you
but
getting more cubes.
their leaderboard also didn't mean anything.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So the leaderboard that they introduced was just total cubes gained.
Great. I mean, I think that is the correct way to do it because that emphasizes that like this doubling cube is a hugely important part of the game.
Yeah. Kanye Best, people might know him from when he was like jamming vampires and like playing in the Fandom Legends tournaments and stuff, and he's very active in our Discord and whatever. He's another person that's been playing Snap, and we've been talking like almost every day about it. And we've also played on the ladder, I think 11 times at this point,
Nice.
maybe 12.
What's the record?
Very good for me.
Okay.
I think I'm X2 and 1, where X is 8 or 9.
Shots fired, Kanye. Shots fired.
No, he knows.
Pick it up.
Don't worry, he knows.
Pick it up, bro.
But okay, so he was like almost 500. Like he had like double my elo because they did the leaderboard thing and they just started playing a bunch because he wanted to be at the top of the leaderboard.
He loves leaderboards, by the way.
Yeah, just
Love
number go
ladder.
up.
Yep, claimed #1 several times. You can't get away from the leaderboards.
But like we all admit, including him, that it's just like really toxic and also doesn't mean anything, right?
Yep.
So, but he's just like, I can't stop. But he was like 4th or something on their leaderboard. I was maybe like 50th or whatever. I basically slowed down the amount of playing that I did. But yeah, the game is really good. People should definitely check it out. I don't know when it's going into open beta or anything, and I don't like many things, and I certainly don't recommend many of the things. Like, you may be like, oh, Gerry is playing mobile games. He does not talk about them very much. Yeah, it's because I like them, and I don't necessarily know that other people would. So I'm not going to recommend them to you. But this is a game that is just like legitimately good, legitimately fun. And
it's beautiful too, by the way. Like
yeah,
the art is beautiful. The graphics. I mean, it's a TCG, so you wouldn't expect the graphics to like really matter. They're beautiful. They look outstanding. All the cards look amazing.
Well, pro tip: turn the whatever down to medium. Turn it down to 30 FPS because it does. I have iPhone XS Max, so a few years old at this point, but like it does drain my battery pretty quickly when I had it on 60 FPS. So
I have a newer iPhone and I juiced those babies up and it looks incredible. So
and what's the battery life like?
Fine. I haven't noticed any. I mean, like, so I have I think 13 Max is the phone I have. I don't know. I've lost count at this point. So it's the bigger version and it's also a newer version. So it's pretty well suited to run this game. But
cool. Yeah, I want to get a new phone at some point, but might wait until the 14 or something. But
probably a good idea. You always want to get like maximum equity out of your new phone, and it's tough because there's always a new one around the corner. So.
Well, it's especially bad now because it's like 2 months away or something, right? It's like it'd be kind of silly for me to do.
Tell that to my wife who just dropped her phone in the pool and had.
Well, you can't help that stuff. That is just the cost of doing business. right? So if you do that and you have to replace it, whatever.
I'm suspicious. I feel like she was just in the market for a new phone, and oops, I dropped it, and one of those scenarios. And then
Well, once you're in the
miraculously,
market, you stop maybe taking as good a care of the
that
current one.
is that is fair. No, she was due though. She had, I think, like an 8 Max. So she was a few years old at this point, definitely. So
Yeah, check the game out. It's it's not Magic, it's not Hearthstone. It is definitely a very different game, but
unique. It's very unique.
the engine is so fun, and I hate fun, right? Like I don't say that about a lot of things. So this honestly should speak volumes as to like how good this game is. And I don't know. I'm still playing it like a month later. I'm not going as hard because the no collection track mostly like it slows down a lot.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I'm sure we could do like a whole episode talking about that in general. I'll let people figure it out because it's super unique and very interesting. And I think a lot of people like poo poo it, but I
I've
sort of like
enjoyed
it.
it.
Yeah.
I actually like how it makes opening packs exciting again.
Right.
And by packs, I mean you get single card rewards, but it's the only way to get cards. And
Yeah.
so when you're like really looking for a card and you finally flip it over, it feels good in a way that like opening an actual booster pack does that is not replicated in any other online system, not Magic Online, not
Correct.
Hearthstone. I just think it has a unique feel to it. And, there's some downsides to it too, but in terms of capturing that pack opening experience, I think it does it better than any other digital game.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I haven't felt that in 20 years probably.
Yep. Yeah, it's cool.
So that part is interesting to me, and it's one of the aspects where it's like, no, I actually I can enjoy this for what it is, right? Like, not everything has to be like, well, if I want all the cards, I spend $500 and I get all the cards or whatever. It's like I don't want to do that with every single game because I'd be broke, right?
Yep. Yeah, and
So
I'm not a dollar into Snap and having a great time. So that's another, really nice. I mean, could you spend money? Absolutely. Could you hotshot yourself into larger card pools? Yeah, but I don't think you have to. Quite frankly, the game is still fun at all implementations of it. So
yeah, just try and enjoy the thing for what it is, and try and enjoy playing a game where you don't have access to every single card,
yep,
because that is a novel concept that we haven't had for a very long time. And it's not like, oh, they have lightning bolt and I have shock. That's not what it is. It's just like
nope.
your opponents might have some different cards than you do, but that's okay. You
Yeah,
can
you
still
get
win.
very good cards early on, very very competitive cards, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I think like at this point, a couple weeks of play, no dollars in, I think I have very close to the best deck, if like not the actual best deck, it within range of being able to be played. So I think it's totally fine.
I still win like 80% of my games.
Yeah,
So
about the same. Lower down
you're
on ladder, of course. We'll see if that sticks when I get to the high end.
oh, okay. Where are you right now?
I'm at like 40 something, so I still have a lot of climbing to do. I just don't play as much as you do. Like your
Yeah.
ability to put in reps is like so intense, and I'm just like, I'm playing every day. I do my missions every day. I make sure I maximize the amount of returns I get. So that's a lot for me. For me to be playing 5 or 6 games a day, that's a pretty high number in terms of how I usually engage with things. But
Yeah, I think as long as it is keeping you coming back every day, like
yep,
that's saying something.
yep, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Then there are times where I'm just like, I want to just like play for an hour. I'll just like jam for an hour and climb a bunch. So,
Yep, that's cool.
yeah. So the reset set me back down to 70
Okay.
from 270, and then I got back to 100. Not the day it happened, but the next day.
Yeah, I think I was like at 60 something when the reset happened,
Okay,
and then I don't know what that brought me down to, but
dude, get there, get those rewards. You gotta get those rewards every month, man.
all right, I'll get the rewards. But like I said, I have most of the cards I want. Like short of getting into like the pool 3 stuff, I'm mostly good. So
Yeah, but I mean, once you get to pool 3, it's a drag. So
yeah, absolutely.
get those rewards. All right, Magic time. You ready for this?
I am ready for Magic. Oh, one more thing before we go to Magic.
Yeah.
I got a Steam Deck this week. Do you know
Oh,
what a Steam Deck is?
yeah. It's like the hotkeys, right?
No, that's a Stream Deck.
Oh, what's a Steam Deck?
I got a Steam Deck, which is very different. I've already had a Stream Deck. Steam Deck is
Why?
essentially
So I get that Steam is a platform, right?
yes.
Like, why would they name it that?
That's a good question. Now that I say that, I'm like, is that actually the name? I'm pretty sure that's the name. I think it is. Yeah, it's a portable system. It's like
Oh,
actually it's a
it's
port.
It's like
portable
a
PC.
Switch for Steam games?
Yep. Yep. And it has a dock like Switches do. And it doesn't do the disconnected controllers and stuff, but essentially a fully portable PC that can also
Wait.
dock. And
So if you dock it to play on the TV or whatever, and it doesn't, you just need different controllers then?
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You'd use like a Bluetooth controller.
Okay.
But they all work.
That's
Every single conceivable Bluetooth controller works with it.
yeah, because Steam was already pretty good about that, and they weren't making their own stuff anyway. So
Yep. Yep. So
okay,
it's a pretty easy barrier. But it runs, AAA games. You play Elden Ring on it if you want as a portable. That's a pretty big deal. And then obviously, just like as someone who has a massive Steam library, I essentially bought this system and had 600 games already.
right.
In addition to the fact that it's just a PC. So if you want to do emulation type stuff, it's all on the table. You can do all of it. Really like it so far. I'm really pleased with the purchase. And it's weird because like I also like my Switch and I use my Switch a lot, but I have a feeling now that I have this, my Switch might be DOA. And it's just like a more powerful system that can play way more games that I own. And I have it hard to believe I'll go back to Switch now that I have this.
The Switch library is so good, though.
I guess there's still the exclusives, right? Like that could
Yeah.
still pull me in. But outside of that, like I'll never buy any multi-platform game for Switch again because I would just buy it for the Steam Deck instead. And then I'd also have it on my computer, which is one of the things I ran into a lot where I was like buying a version of a game I liked and the portable version.
Oh, yeah.
Now I just get to buy it once.
So yeah, don't do exciting. That. That's kind of silly.
It's a little silly, but if you like have a game you really love, and this is often like an indie title. So like, you're talking a $5 game, not a AAA $60 game. So it's not as hard to swallow, but.
Did you play Shredder's Revenge?
I played a little bit by myself. I don't think like that's the purpose of the game. Like playing it by yourself is just kind of lame, but it's cool for what it is. And I'm looking forward to like actually getting together with like my cousin and brother who I grew up playing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game with and playing through it at some point.
Yeah, it's fun. I like it a lot.
It's cool. It's really well done. It's just not a single player game.
I mean, it is, but it's just like it is exactly the kind of game that is more fun with friends.
Yep.
It's like playing Mario Kart by yourself. It's like, I mean, you can, but
not the same. Yep.
All right, magic time now.
Now it's magic time. I will allow the progression to magic. 2 hours into the podcast, we may talk about it.
All right, what do you want to know about Omnath or Murktide or the matchup?
I just want to know if there's anything that has made you like sort of doubt either of these two decks. Because like I said, I had these at the top of the food chain not my testing, your testing, pre-testing. I would have said these were the best two decks. Has that held up? Are you worried about, metagame adaptations? If you look at the most recent Magic Online results, I don't think it's either of these decks has really been shining through in the challenges. Is there something here to worry about, or is this just small sample size? And I say that actually like 4-color won one of the challenges. It just has been absent from some of the other ones. So
Murktide got second in
was the runner-up.
The other one.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, this is the same one.
Same one. Yeah, but if you look at the other event, they're just like both absent for the most part. So interesting.
Batutina 7th place with 4-color. I'm scrolling through.
Yeah, in the other event you're talking about now, a ton of Hammer, just all over the place in the top 8.
That's good though. I think I'm maybe gonna like accidentally over prep for Hammer, just by virtue of the cards that I'm including. So
okay, yeah, that's good. Good place to be.
But I don't know, man. It's so different, right? IRL versus online, and was kind of having these conversations in the car too, where it's like it is so bizarre to not like have just no idea of what in-store metagame is going to look like, because you don't know who is traveling, you don't know what decks the local players own and stuff like that. It's like there could just be tournaments with like no 4-color in it or whatever, right? So it's just so weird to me.
To me, I feel like that is the deck that should always be there. Like there's a good argument that any other deck, like even things like Hammer, Murktide, I think all those decks based on a local metagame could be underrepresented. When you talk about decks that the best players are going to gravitate towards, the thing that is just like omnipresent in the format, to me, it feels like should be 4-color all the time.
So I agree with that, but there's still no guarantee, right? So I don't know. It's just weird, and it's like, well, how much should this affect how I'm approaching things? And it is definitely making me try to be more of a generalist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell me about your specific list? Where what kind of conclusions these have pushed you towards? Things you're doing differently from other folks is always what I'm most interested in.
I still think counterspell mostly stinks, especially in like the 3 and 4 mana sorcery deck. And I don't know, it's like also just not that easy to cast, right?
Hmm.
So I think there's a lot of downsides, and I really like the Risen Reef approach. So I'm sticking with that, and I don't know exactly how that's going to affect things. Like I've tried Utopia Sprawl, and most of the Risen Reef lists cut expressive iteration because you just have this other card draw
Hmm.
engine, and iteration and Risen Reef is like a little bit too much of like spinning your wheels, and pretty bad when you're behind and stuff like that. So I don't know. I mean, I could take the list that I have built currently and play it and probably be fine with it. But then it's like you look at like Bakutina's list; he has Risen Reef, and no counterspell, no iteration, but also no Utopia Sprawl, and is doing like Eladamri's Call, whereas I have the Heat Traverse Bauble package, which I think is really good with Risen Reef.
Yep.
So I don't know. I still have a few things left to figure out for sure, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to stick with Risen Reef because I think that it is slightly better in an open field because you actually just get like these pseudo combo turns where I don't know, it's like matchups like Tron or whatever, or even like Amulet if you're kind of behind.
Yep.
It's just like you have no real catch up mechanism or no way to like actually put a hammer in them. It's very much like you have to deal with things individually as they come out, and then once you get so far behind, it's like what do you do? And assembling like multiple Risen Reefs and just kind of chaining off with the pitch elementals and triggering Omnath in the meantime, and then like blinking it every third land you hit with Ephemerate to reset it and keep generating mana and stuff. Like it, it is a soft combo that like lets you go through a large portion of your deck, if not like all of your deck, and then in the meantime you're just like solituding and like furying things. So it gives you a comeback mechanism, which I really like.
I have to imagine like that in conjunction with Emrakul allows you to pull out of basically any situation, right? There should be no insurmountable odds you can face when you're able to set up those kind of games.
Yeah, I mean Emrakul is good in games where like you kind of have stuff going on. But I think Emrakul just by itself, you're really relying on your opponent to be able to just like obliterate a lot of their own stuff, right? But like I don't know, think about Amulet versus just an Emrakul and like a dry board. It's like okay, well you have this 13 power thing, but Amulet can't really interact with itself and like self sabotage or anything. So like you're going to maybe be able to attack a Primeval Titan into the Emrakul and maybe force them to pick up a lot of their lands or something, but like then they still get another turn and like you just have this Emrakul that's not super threatening to them. So I feel like you can very easily Emrakul things like Amulet or Tron and still lose.
And I have not ever Emrakuled a Amulet player, so it's really hard. But I
Well, actually, no. Hold on. Maybe I should take that back because they do have Valakut.
that's what I was going to say. Like they have ways to just kill themselves, quite frankly. And if you're not doing that, if you're able to do that, you should be able to blow up a lot of their board. You can do like fail to find stuff and waste a lot of their tutoring capacity. You can burn through some of their resources, which are somewhat finite in some instances. Like there's things specifically you need, and if you're able to account for those, I think you can do some damage. Like they just play with their deck in their hand a lot, so maybe they're exploitable. You could like turn their turn into paying for summoners packs and things like that. So I always find that when I cast an Emrakul against someone, it actually completely warps my opinion of what their deck is capable of because you start looking at it through this other lens, and it's really hard to piece together until you live it. I think you can do quite a bit of damage to an Amulet player with an Emrakul.
I think you can do a bunch of damage, but if you're still in the spot where it's like, oh, I have this Emrakul and like nothing else because they just went over the top of me and like all of our cards traded, but they still ended up with Amulet or two and a Zusa or a Dryad or whatever, and had the capability of casting a Titan and stuff. It doesn't seem like the Emrakul's enough to get around that. But yeah, if they do have a Dryad and you are able to do a bunch of stuff, obviously you can just like Valakut them down. But without a Dryad, it's pretty weird. But yeah, I mean, you should be able to access the Summoner's Pact somehow.
You assume so. Now I just want an Emrakul and Amulet player and figure
we'll see
out
what
the
happens,
worst thing I can do to them. Yeah.
But you know what I mean, though, right? It's like if they are doing their like go big, go over the top thing, it's like pretty bad for you, and there's not a whole lot you can do. It is you are very much in the position of like Emrakul and Prey, or trying to assemble multiple Risen Reefs or whatever. So
yeah, you need things to go right from that spot for sure.
Yeah. So I don't know. Risen Reef to that end too is like a little bit more proactive, right? Especially if you are doing the Utopia Sprawl thing. Although I don't know, Utopia Sprawl is clunky, and there are just like a lot of draws where you need to like fetch a Triome on turn 1 anyway. So I don't necessarily think it works out, even though the dream scenario, it certainly looks really good where you like turn to a Risen Reef and now you're just like kind of the beatdown deck.
Yep.
But I think that Reef is good. Like I said last week, I've been watching like a lot of Kane stream, and he prefers the Counterspell no Risen Reef version, like definitely the classic one. And I don't know, like they win a lot. Those players definitely do really well, but it just doesn't seem correct to me.
I mean, playstyle matters a bunch. I think if you have a way you're going to approach this matchup,
I can adjust my playstyle though. It's just a matter of finding out like what's correct.
Well, no. So I know that you could play any playstyle, but if you're playing in such a way that like you think playing momentum forward is giving you the best chance to win, then that matters a lot. Like you are playing in a way to put opponents in a blender, give them no decisions, and like sort of seize the momentum with this deck, then Counterspell is going to be much worse for you. Like just because you're choosing to play that way, it doesn't mean you're making like an arbitrary choice. I'm saying if you are convinced that is the correct way to play, that can work Counterspell out of your playbook. Whereas these players, they're convinced that you're supposed to play in another fashion, and like, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but once they believe that, they're going to play in such a way to make Counterspell better.
Yeah, and certainly like build their decks in that way and whatnot.
Right. It's a ripple effect.
I don't know. It's like you think that Risen Reef is maybe a little bit, maybe not worse, but like not very good against Murktide, and that was the matchup that we were focusing on. And I mean, the stuff that you would have instead, like Counterspell, is just also not that good. It's definitely a card that you shave in sideboarding, like you'll keep some copies in or whatever. But
yeah, it needs to hit very specific things, I think.
Risen Reef, and by extension, playing Cavern of Souls is very, very good. And Risen Reef by itself is like, you invest 3 mana, sorcery speed, doesn't really affect the battlefield. If it hits a land on the first time, that definitely matters, right? Because, now you're up on mana, maybe get to double spell territory a little bit faster, or, play around Spell Pierce, and the post-board games play around Mystical Dispute, stuff like that. But I did enjoy Risen Reef in that matchup, even though it seems like, I can't afford to take time to do this. Like, there were definitely moments where I was able to, and it was solid. And then the fact that you're playing Risen Reef means that you want to play Cavern of Souls is like, Cavern of Souls Omnath is just one of the best things you can possibly be doing against them, or maybe even against the Counterspell variants in the mirror,
Yeah, Cavern of Souls seems particularly strong in the format right now. I was thinking about it as you were talking. I think Risen Reef is in the running for my least favorite Magic card of all time. I think it's right up there in terms of how it affects games. And I'm going back, especially like its presence in Standard and how it would just create like these weird, gross snowballs where like you just had too many resources and the game didn't feel like Magic like Magic at all at that point. Like when you just do this snowbally stuff, it's just kind of arbitrary. That's the way Risen Reef feels to me when it goes off. And what that means when I say it's one of my least favorite cards is that it's an incredible card. It just changes the terms of engagement for games in a way that often favors the caster of it. So
yeah, which is more of what I want, I guess, in a format that's powerful like Modern. And
yeah, it makes sense.
If you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, I feel like that's a fine place to turn. But I mean, being a little bit more reactive and controlling with Counterspell, like I definitely see the upside of it. But I don't know, it's just like make the argument of why I should do that instead of be proactive, especially in an open field. And like I don't think that I would buy any of your arguments.
It's almost never been right in the history of Modern to be reactive. You wanted to be the one moving forward almost always. There's been some brief exceptions to that. Yeah, I would expect it to be true here as well.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens after I play in, this tournament and maybe the next one, and have some reps under my belt and everything. Although I will say that if Josh wins the first one, I'm just probably going to play Murktide for the next one. So
fair enough.
uh,
Why don't you tell me about your Murktide list in that case? Do you have anything interesting going on as far as that deck list goes?
yeah, kind of. So the second place list from the challenge last weekend was again doing some of the weird stuff that we talked about last week with like 2 Hearst main deck and a
Mm-hmm.
dress down and 2 DRCs. This one has a Snapcaster, right? And I buy that stuff is correct for Magic Online. If you expect a bunch of mirrors, then Hearst is great. If you expect Living End, Hearst is great, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I'm sure the main deck dress down is good. In this Was this the top 8 with all the hammer decks too?
No, this was
No,
the
that
other
was that
top
was
8.
the other one. So if you expect a bunch of hammer, then that's great there too. But I don't know. After playing some games, I think a lot of the stuff that I thought before was correct, where it's like Ledger Shredder is a little bit clunky, not very good with Counterspell. To make Counterspell good, you really want to just max on
One
the good one
drops.
drops.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started with like 3 DRC, 3 Shredder, 3 Murktide, like that sort of list, and now I'm just 4 DRC, 2 Shredder, and I think that's good. I'm not sure if that's correct. There are definitely matchups where Shredder helps you a lot. You have this effective Tarmogoyf against Burn on turn 2 is certainly
Mm-hmm.
better than a bunch of stuff that gets Searing Blazed or whatever. So I could see it helping in a bunch of different spots, but also just having a bunch of 1 mana spells and things that can trade it against Burn is like going to be good too. So it's hard to figure out like what's actually correct, but I think it is just going to be lower mana curve in general. And for open field tournament, I'm not going to go super hard on like Hearst or anything. Obviously, going to play them in the sideboard because they're incredible. But it is very interesting to me that the Hearst opens up some sideboard slots, which I would kind of want for some other stuff too. So maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that cheeky one of hers sneaking in. I could see that happening. To your point about one drops, I think if you're assuming you're among the better players in the field, you can make an even better case for doing the one drop stuff because you just play more games, you get more options, you have more choices on a given turn. And it's one of the reasons why, like, historically very good players have gravitated towards Delver style archetypes because they do have all the available options to them on a given turn and are able to make multiple different plays. It isn't just A, B, C, follow these lines, do this thing because that's where your mana goes. And, I expect these fields in particular to be ones where you are highly favored in terms of play skill. And I'm not at all shocked to hear you defaulting back to more 1 mana spells, even from like a non-structural level, just like maximizing your chances to win. I'm very convinced that 1 mana spells are the way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it matters a lot with the card counterspell specifically. Like having cheaper cards in general gives you more options on any given turn, but I think that Ledger Shredder the card is certainly more flexible and is going to give you more options for like what you get to do with it. So I mostly agree with you, but I do just want to point out that DRC in theory you get to pick and choose like when you want to spend your mana on this thing or whatever, and you're gonna have more turns where you get to play multiple spells or whatever. But Ledger Shredder itself, you can attack, you can block, you filter some more, right? And DRC literally is just like you have to attack, which is a downside a lot of the time. Like there are endurances, there are opposing Ledger Shredders, Murktide, stuff like that. So
For sure. There's something to be said though about like flexibility in play versus flexibility to play and how those impact games. That's actually a really interesting topic that if I was still writing, I would write about it.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting,
really.
right? Because it's like, okay, do you want to have like flexibility of options for like what to do in the first 4 turns, or I guess like first 3 turns, or is it like Shredder being able to navigate through like, are you the beatdown or are you the control in this moment, and like how quickly do you want to actually just shift that momentum and like try and get your opponent dead and whatnot, and then there's like the filtering aspect on top of it as far as like the decisions you get to make for holding back a spell this turn so that you can shred the next turn, and like what do you discard, what are you looking for, et cetera, et cetera. It's like I think that would be an interesting topic for maybe even just looking at pros and cons and not necessarily like how it affects win rate or anything, but it's just like you are making these choices with how you build your deck, and they do have like rippling, cascading effects.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and I'm also the first to admit that like playing tons of a low variance game recently has shaped my relationship with variance in a very weird and unexpected way, where I thought it was just like static, and I had completely embraced and accepted variance, and I know its role, and I know how it's supposed to influence things, and now I'm just like, well, damn, just give me more spells I can always cast, like especially when I'm playing these 19 land decks. Like I just want to put things into play and not battle the mana system. Like I want to have these options, and one drops are far more appealing to me for that kind of play pattern. So
Sure. Yeah, I could see that. I mean, playing Murktide felt nice. Absolutely, because it's super low to the ground, aggressive. You have so much built-in card advantage,
yeah,
and I feel like there were some games, oddly, where I wasn't necessarily able to chain like card drawing stuff together, which seems weird when you have like DRC, Shredder, Iteration, Charm, Consider,
yeah, half
Um,
your deck.
yeah, but like you have that capability to play those games where your opponent might have something where it's like I don't know, they're 4 cards up on you or whatever, but it's like you still get to keep pace. It feels very similar to Legacy Delver, just low land count chaining brainstorms. It's like I'm still keeping up with you even though you're up like raw cards, but like this deck can actually just go up raw cards too.
Man, now that we're having this conversation, I'm just sad I don't own Ragavans, because this is actually what I want to play in Modern, right? Like this is 100% in my wheelhouse, and
It's your is it Dreadhorde deck?
yeah, and the more I like think about how I want to show up to a Modern tournament where I'm not like 100% jamming games all the time, invested in it, and like where I get any kind of edge, it's in playing this deck. But I'm just looking at the $600 I'd probably have to shell out to complete this one, and I
Oh
like
my
that's
god, Bryan, they're $70. I know that you're looking at like foil prices or whatever,
well,
but
obviously yes, and then I don't have Murktides either. Those have to be expensive, right? I don't actually know this, but
I mean, I just bought them, but I bought so many cards I don't remember. Nah, they're 19. That's fine.
okay, that's fine-ish.
19 for regs.
Do I have Archmage's charms? I don't know about that. Those can't be expensive anymore, right?
They're still like
Reprinted a
20 bucks.
bunch. Dress downs. I don't think I have. There's just a few like weirdo missing cards that I don't have from this deck, but
You're too busy buying amulet cards and didn't buy the good stuff.
I know. I'm so stupid. Why do I do this to myself repeatedly?
Dude, especially for Modern, you can't buy foils, man. They're too expensive.
Yeah.
All right, so Josh is going to win the first PTQ with Murktide. I'll win the second one, and then I'll just mail you my deck.
Yeah. Just ship it. That's good. That's easy enough.
Easy game.
And I don't have a Modern one on my schedule yet anyway, so it's like this is very theoretical. And as soon as I don't just crush this first Pioneer event, which I will obviously do,
dude, just make some friends. You definitely have people there who can just like loan you non-foil Murktide.
That's me. I'm the guy who loans out everything. Like that's always been my role in this area, and now I'm doing it in 2 games, just lending out cards left and right. So,
well, I mean, there's got to be someone.
There does have to be someone.
Someone has to like own cards and like buy cards and stimulate the card store economy in your area.
Me. I'm the only one. I own everything. Everyone just comes to me.
Well,
it's me and one other guy. My buddy Ryan also owns everything, and everyone goes to him as well. So.
Does he not have Murktide? I mean, come on.
He probably does. He's a very busy guy though, but I'll bug him. That's a good idea.
Yeah, if he's very busy, it means he's not going to be using it. Perfect.
Almost certainly not. Yeah, and he's probably got like 400 of them, so just the perfect guy to bug.
Yeah. So if you are budding card store owner would like to make a bunch of money, just move next to Bryan. Apparently,
seriously, they could like
business.
Yeah, just set up like on my property and just like a little shack, sell me cards. I'll walk outside 2-3 times a day and just purchase from you.
Man, it's like like Elder Scrolls or like Breath of the Wild type of thing. You just go outside. There's like just some traveling merchant.
Yeah, the NPCs are just lined up.
Yep.
Up and down my driveway, and they get me every time.
Oh man, I'm sure that's worth it, honestly, for some
for
whales,
the NPCs. Right?
Well, the NPCs, it's hard to gauge because like how valuable is their time or whatever, right? It's like they're not real.
I don't know. I feel like you're being.
This is NPC slander, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I don't know what the term is for.
They all have their very
they all
rich
matter.
backstories.
NPCs matter. Are you the type of dude who like in an RPG just walks around like murdering the NPCs?
No, I'm like too scared to do
You
that.
hesitated a very long time before you answered
So
this
so
question.
I would like to, but I don't know. Thinking about like playing like Witcher 3 or whatever.
Yeah,
Not a game I would normally play, but needed something to do during the pandemic. You understand?
yeah.
And
I have
it's
it on my
like,
Steam Deck right now. I just
yeah,
installed it.
of
Maybe
course
I'll
you
play it
do.
at some point.
I played it on my Switch, and it was pretty bad because the load times were awful. So
There you go.
+1 for the Steam Deck. Like that option exists, and it's just like, well, I want to play the game, and I don't necessarily want to like lock myself out of content by like, oh, you just murdered our entire town. Obviously, I'm not going to give you a side quest or whatever, right?
Hmm.
So it's like I kind of want to do that, but it feels so final.
Yeah. What
It's,
about?
so I've never done it, but I would like to do it just to see what happens. But then I'm
Yeah,
also like,
yeah.
well, I want to play the game, and I'm not going to play the game a second time just to murder everyone. So
I'm assuming you didn't play much like GTA ever throughout your life, right?
no, no.
Yeah. I just wanted to check if you would like ever just like stop what you were doing and just go on a bit of a rampage, pop off a few rounds and see what kind
Well,
of chaos you could get up to.
that's what you're supposed to do, right? So I mean, I feel like I could, but then also because you're supposed to do it, it probably wouldn't feel as good.
Yeah, I don't do it. I play GTA very much straight laced and complete my missions when I do it. So I don't know. I just like I have a lot of love for the NPCs. I just want them to be able to go about their business and just try to live. That's all. I don't need to interject my rampages on them. There's plenty of other things for me to murder in these games.
Yeah, go murder some wolves or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
there are some,
wolves, geists,
yeah,
dragons.
there are some NPCs where it's like, oh, this character is really well done, right? But just so many of them feel like very flat and clearly did not have like a lot of care put into them, and it's like I kind of feel bad because I know what is possible in that realm for you to create like an NPC that is adored and people love
Hmm.
and may
Yep.
not want to murder or whatever. But yeah, I'm mostly looking at it through like the average NPC is like, probably no one cares except
Do
for
you
you.
know anything about Disco Elysium?
I know that it exists, but that's
Okay.
about it.
I wonder how you would engage with that game. I wonder if you would enjoy it. I am not like a fanatic about it. I know there's people who see it as like one of the best games ever made. I have dabbled in it and I want to dabble a little bit more deeply, but it's very interesting for like, it basically is just an NPC simulator. Like it's all just engaging with NPCs and kind of like engaging with yourself and your mental state much more than anything else you would expect in an RPG. I don't know. It would be interesting to watch you play it and watch your assessment of it.
Well, so in something like that where it's like, yeah, the NPCs are meant to be fleshed out or whatever, then I'm not going to want to kill them because they're
Uh,
not going to feel like NPCs.
they have a lot to them, but like I still think there are some you may want to kill. And also like you're encouraged, like the entire setup is the game is to like role play these varying forms of your own character down to their ideologies. So like you can play in a certain way and your character will get like a feminist bonus because he treats non-males a certain way, and you can play a certain way and you'll get a communist bonus because you engage with the economy in a certain way. So I think when that's the case, you're incentivized to be like, well, what is this character, how do they act in this situation if they're just like an unhinged lunatic, and you can play in that fashion and like flesh it out.
Right, but I'd rather go back to being like a feminist communist than being a murderer, right? I wouldn't want to like delete my save file,
It's
basically.
designed for multiple playthroughs. So I am currently playing a version of like just a loose cannon like substance abusing lead character who's just completely out of his mind. But I
Yeah,
want
but
to go back
I
and
don't
play
want to
like
go back to my 20s, Brian.
I guess I do. I don't know. That's just kind of what I wanted to explore a little bit in this first playthrough. But I am curious to play like a more straight laced playthrough, or even like a more just murderous playthrough. I think that's interesting as well, just to see how the game reacts around you. Because I mean, this game is set up as a sandbox for that. It's not a sandbox for killing dragons. It's a sandbox specifically for dealing with issues of like emotion and intent and human motivation. So
Yeah, I still can't do multiple playthroughs on things. If it's like short, then maybe, but I don't know, even like roguelike stuff doesn't hit me all that much.
interesting. I like roguelikes because they call back to like my 8-bit experience. Like I've been playing a lot of Rogue Legacy lately, and it just like has the feel of playing a really good Castlevania or Mega Man game in a way that varies enough that I enjoy playing it multiple times.
Yeah, I wanna play once, collect all the things, get kind of strong, fight some hard bosses, and then just be done.
Interesting. Interesting.
I'm weird. All right, magic.
Oh, sorry. Back to Magic. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the old mid cast detour as opposed to the starting cast detour, and then we'll probably get one more in before the end.
I hope not. I don't think we have time for that, but we'll
Oh,
see.
okay.
Yeah. So 4-color Risen Reef stuff. Like I said, I'm working on solidifying these deck lists so I know what cards to get, and working on like sideboarding guides. We'll hopefully post those at some point, but no promises. And the Murktide deck is pretty straight laced, kind of boring. And then trying to figure out the sideboard is pretty interesting, especially like again, this super open field. Like, if I had 20 sideboard cards, I'd be really happy. But instead, I'm just like, God, I have to like sacrifice something, and it's gonna bite us.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that's just how these unlicensed hearths started creeping into main decks, where people just trying to find some way to squeeze out that one extra sideboard slot, and it's like, this is my most main deckable sideboard card, so this is how I get that extra slot.
Yeah, but then I don't know. This sideboard has like a Hercules Recall in it from the second place challenge. It's like that might have been like my 21st sideboard card, I guess, but I was not fighting super hard to get that one in there, so I don't know.
Well, this is on the day, I think. Wait, let me check before I say this. Nope, never mind. I was going to say this is on the day after there was like 5 hammers in the top 8. It's actually the day before, so no, I got nothing for you.
Ahead of your time, Yep. Or maybe just beat them all with the Hercules. Who knows?
Yeah, the Hercules just shut out all the hammers from the top.
I don't know. I'd rather have a Fury than a Hercules. Like give me the second Fury. Let's go.
I agree with you. I do have an OG. I have an OG Hercules though that I would love to play. So that might actually just like push me in that direction.
Oh my god! But it's not foil.
It isn't. That's true. That's true. This deck won't be 100% foil though.
Just again, dude, borrow it from your friends. You're fine.
Okay, you got it.
All non-foil, white bordered, like 4th edition Hercules Recall, just completely hideous.
I like those too. It's either got to be the nicest version or the worst version possible. I'm down with either.
So I don't know. I'm not sure how much there is to say about Murktide. I think that there were like a lot of interesting scenarios that came up when we were playing, as far as what to do in specific situations. Josh had not really, like he knows the cards or whatever, but like had not played with all the new modern stuff. So,
yeah, what blew his mind the most? Like, what was the card that he just like couldn't believe existed?
That was Endurance, which I'll get to. Okay. But the first thing was like him playing turn 1 Ragavan on the draw. I was like, oh, you're about to learn a lesson. And I just like ran and sixed it. It's like, yep, you can't do that, Yep. Unless you know that like it's gonna die and it's gonna be fine, right? There was a scenario that I played from the other side where I was like, well, I have Ragavan on the draw. They could run and six this, but I just have to do it anyway. Because my man is tied up. I'm light on lands, and I have like a heat to finish off the thing or whatever. So, there was that. I think there was another thing where it was like, okay, I learned a lesson there. Good. But I forget. The Endurance thing was, I played a Cavern. We're playing some post board games. So I have one main, and it showed up a couple times or whatever. But then it just like repeatedly showed up in the post board games, and so I like play a Cavern on 3 and pass, and he attacks with a DRC and a Ragavan, and I put the Endurance into play, and he's just like confused. He's just like, what does the evoke do? I was like, yeah, just, shuffle your graveyard, put it on the bottom or whatever. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, okay, block your Ragavan. He's like, what? That only costs 3?
It does a lot.
I was like, yep. And then the next game, it was like main A, bauble, consider, enable delirium for DRC, attack. I play Endurance, and he's just like, okay, like, take 1 instead or whatever. And I was like, no, block.
Whammy.
Or no, what? Maybe like that didn't even matter or whatever, but because it doesn't like naturally have flying. So I think maybe it was that attack. I don't know. But at some point he was like, what, that has reach too? Like, what, what the hell? And then he was just like mad that it had 4 toughness because there was like a lightning bolt involved at some point, So I think that was the one where it was just like, why is there so much text? I was like, yeah, why do you think this was like $70?
Yeah, hell of a card.
So that was probably the one where he was just like, what the hell? It's like not even that offensive.
It just does everything.
Right.
Absolutely everything you could want from it.
Yeah. So that was kind of the problem, because every time it got cast, it was just like, oh, it gets another line of text or whatever.
Find something new. Some new way to ruin your game plan.
Oh yeah, and it's just like, oh, it has like flash too. And it's like, yeah, I mean, why not?
Gotta have the flash for that evoke ability.
So what else was it? Like Cavern Souls went a long way. Definitely made life pretty miserable. Risen Reef, I was able to like sneak into play and then had to eat a burn spell after it like already drew me a card basically, which was pretty
Mm-hmm.
nice. Josh's Ragavans hit my Teferis a lot, which was like pretty annoying,
Okay.
but maybe not that out of the ordinary. And then yeah, it was just like trying some different sideboard configurations and figuring out like what would help more. It's like game one is maybe pretty close, but then four color can just side in like 8 of the best cards possible against Murktide, and then it's like, what do you do? You know, because Murktide is getting like very small upgrades.
Well, yeah. I mean, what do you do from the Murktide side? Is it you? Do you try and play like some of the bigger stuff? Like, do you go moon setups where you try and mess with their mana and then like try and stick something big like a Jace, or
I
what are you
mean,
doing
like
most of the time?
you can try and moon them. I just hate Blood Moon in general, especially against a deck that. So you're an aggro deck, right?
Yeah.
And they are pretty heavily incentivized to fetch basics early, and they have abundant growth. So even if they don't know that you were siding in Blood Moon, it's still very unlikely to actually get them. And like, yeah, you can lock them off of like a color or something, but even then, it's maybe not doing like a great job, or you're just like not locking them off a color no matter what, or they can just still function without that color. And
Yep.
the color that they are least likely to fetch a basic for is mountain. So they're going for blue and green
Yep. And you
immediately,
just set
and
them
then
up.
maybe white. So it just doesn't really matter. But yeah, it was like you get some mystical disputes and some dress downs, and it was questionable whether or not dress down was actually good. Because like in theory, like yeah, it can stop a solitude trigger or like brick an Omnath for a turn and then you get to kill it cleanly or whatever. But just like keeping 2 mana open to do that is really tough.
Yeah, I see a Torpor Orb in this second place list. Is it more effective to just do something like that and have it be a permanent solution and
So I think
hope that
Torpor
you can
Orb is
protect it?
awesome, but they also have prismatic ending
Right.
and just stuff like Teferi too, where it's like, all right, I'll get rid of this for a turn, then do my Omnath stuff or my Risen Reef stuff. And
Yeah, all problematic for sure.
so it's not a great solution, but I do think I might add one to the sideboard because it does do stuff, and like you can just slow roll it till like turn 4 and try and protect it with counterspell and stuff like that.
Right. That's what I was going to say is it has to become kind of like a long game plan where you're actually building around protecting this thing and leveraging your tempo. So I think having more like if I want to do Torpor Orb stuff, I probably just want more ways to interact and like so Mystical Dispute, Subtlety, Torpor Orb, and having a little bit more disruption, that sort of makes sense to me.
Well, subtlety torpor orb is a little
Not a
weird.
good combination.
Yeah,
Not a good combination. Yeah, you need subtlety to like do the early stuff and then lead into Torpor Orb.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, even then, you're just like throwing cards away to just memory lapse them, basically, which I don't think is a good plan. Because
It's true.
the games do go long, a lot of your cards do trade, and even if you're successfully torpor orbing them, I mean, they can just put in like free elementals, right? You can just like pitch your solitude into play at that point. And it's not going to die, and then you just have like a life linker, and like your Omnath is still big. So
Yeah, pretty scary.
yeah, it's not like it completely shuts them down. It just like shuts down a lot of their value, which is pretty nice. But yeah, definitely tough. I mean, if the four color deck is not prepared, then I think it's probably fine. Maybe they're cutting on Veil of Summers or like don't have Supreme Verdict or something. But when they do have all that stuff, it's just oh man, all the cards are so good against Murktide at that point.
Yeah, is there any way to like slant in a more aggressive direction if you're the Murktide deck? Like, can you find some more offense where you're more likely to pressure through that disruption, or is the disruption just too good at that point, and they're going to find some way to slow you down effectively?
I mean, I think the cards are all really good, and I think that your deck is so set up heavily for like counterspell, mystical dispute, archmage's charm, like type of interaction that those things really hammer you, and there's not a lot of good ways to get around it. And even if you were like, I'm gonna board in 4 lava spikes or whatever, which was I don't know a thing in one of the old legacy delver decks, very questionable. But something along those lines where you're like, I'm going to get more aggressive. I need to in this matchup. It's just like still won't even get there. I don't think.
Yeah.
Even if they have like a Veil of Summer that now basically has no targets.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I will say that Burn is just generally a tough matchup for 4-color. I mean, like you have good cards for the matchup, but you're also playing 80 cards and have to draw the right ones. So that is kind of tough. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
a
if
lot of burn around these top eights as well, doing
yeah,
pretty well. There's one in third and eighth in this Saturday challenge, and I think there's some in the Sunday challenge as well, maybe a little bit further down.
yeah. So I don't know if you could
Yeah,
be like,
eighth place
well,
on
I'm going to
Sunday.
play fewer counter spells and more things that actually can like burn my opponent out. Then maybe, but it's like burn is good because of the density, right?
Yep, makes sense.
I don't know if there's some hexproof threat that you could board in maybe, or something to prevent life gain that's hard to deal with. The problem is even if you're playing like Roiling Vortex or something, it has the same problems as Torpor Orb where they have prismatic ending,
Yep.
which is again 80 cards. They're incentivized to use ending on like a 1-drop if they have it and stuff, but it's really not that difficult for them to remove. Like you would need something that's just like, oh, I just actually can't deal with this.
Some big dumb blue unkillable thing, possibly.
Yeah. But I don't know. I can't think of anything. So instead, it's just like, well, I'm gonna try and not get got by Veil of Summer, which is really hard, and try and not overextend into Supreme Verdict, which you can do, but then gives them more time to just establish whatever they want.
Yep. Classic
And
problem.
yeah, it just gets really hard after board. I mean, you can just kind of hope that they flood out or don't draw the right answers to the right threats. Murktide specifically requires specific things because prismatic ending and heat don't necessarily tag it. So you're trying to stop Teferi from resolving in general. I think that's maybe the most important card for you to
Yep.
stop.
Yep.
And then they have Solitude, which maybe they'll have to burn on something early. So like, yeah, maybe like a late game Murktide can kind of stick, but that's again why Supreme Verdict's there. So it does not feel good. And then in the meantime, you're like, oh, I'm gonna play a DRC and like sit back on Counterspell, and then they just Cavernous Souls you, and it's like, oh,
Yeah. There's a reason why this deck has been either at the top or among the top choices for quite a long period of time, and it's because they can kind of do everything. So
right. But I mean, the saving grace is like more things are rising up to beat up on it, and also it's like a $1,200 deck,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know, maybe real life will mirror online a little bit closer and we won't see as much 4-color in these PTQs. It'll be interesting to see. But I mean, Murktide is just like such a good deck in a vacuum. And then obviously it has its own personal matchup spread, which has some hits and some misses, but it has so much game against just everything, right? That
Yep.
even if you have one pretty bad matchup, that I think you're still doing okay. And then
Yeah.
that's assuming that like the other person is like set up for you and knows how to play the matchup and is just relatively competent and stuff, which might be a tall ask.
For sure. You got to account for all that when you're doing the local scene. I'm so looking forward to getting your feedback on, what the actual tournaments are like, what the meta games are like, what your experience is like. It should be really, really interesting.
And when is your first one?
Not this weekend, but next weekend is the Pioneer event, and then we'll see after that, what I want to travel to. But there's some other options close by after that.
All right. And are you locked in for blue white for Pioneer?
No, I'm fairly likely to just play Lotus Field. Won a challenge this past week, so starting to finally put up some results. I think that in terms of like the things I will be able to practice and learn, Lotus Field is pretty high up. I've played a bunch in the past, so I'm already like halfway there. I think people are underprepared for it. I think people don't want to account for it. So I'm fairly likely to just go ahead and play Lotus Field. But I do have blue white in my pocket should I have to do that.
Yeah, I will say like while Josh and I sat down and like actually did work for a couple days, if the matchup was not fun to play, we would have stopped playing like a long
Sure.
time ago. So I would not have tested against Lotus Field. Absolutely not.
I don't think anyone wants to. It's not fun. Not fun to be on the other side of.
Well, cool. Yeah, hopefully I'll have some stuff to report after this. Maybe I'll just get annihilated in modern and like win the sealed PTQ. I don't know.
Sounds reasonable.
But then the week after, that's your time, buddy. You gotta do some reporting.
I will report back, possibly a brief report, but whatever it is, you will have full disclosure on how my tournament experience goes.
Oh, then we can just talk about the newest Marvel Snap card you got. That's fine.
Excellent. I just got some pretty good ones today, so I will be very happy to do that.
All right. We are well over an hour. You said you may or may not go off topic for a little bit. This is your chance. Otherwise, we're done.
No, I'm good. I have started to wear my voice down, but not so much that I can't say game. Good luck.